Greg Treek was elected in 2011 in a special election to represent District 47, which encompasses Northwest Oklahoma City, portions of Edmond and Deer Creek, and Bethany. In 2021, Treek was unanimously reelected by the Oklahoma Senate to serve as President Pro Tem, the top leadership position in the Senate. Treek was first elected Pro Tem by the Senate in 2019. He previously served as the Senate Majority Floor Leader, as an Assistant Majority Floor Leader, and he also served as a Majority Whip. He previously served as chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Public Safety and Judiciary, as well as a member of the Appropriations, Health and Human Services, Judiciary, Energy, and Rules Committees. Senator Treek and his wife Marissa reside in Northwest Oklahoma City with their 3 children, Mason, Cooper, and Olivia, who all attend public schools. The Treek family attends Frontline Church. Senator, welcome. We're glad to have you with us here on School Choice Week.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, so, we want to get right into it. Education has been a hot topic in the nation, especially over the last 2.5 years with COVID and its effect that it's had on schools, students, their families, and teachers. But the conversations that are ongoing often don't touch on the whole picture of the realities of Oklahoma education, particularly in terms of policies and legislation. Please help us understand what education in Oklahoma currently looks like.
Well, we've come a long way in the last few years on some matters of choice and on actually funding traditional public schools. The teacher walkout that happened a few years ago was really unnecessary in a lot of ways because we had already had the funding set aside, but we made historic investments there, and we have continued year after year to make historic investments in public education. Last year, we passed some reforms that were much needed, but we didn't go far enough to put parents in charge of their education. And anyone who was listening to me at that time knew that I wished to go further. Yeah. But public schools are an extremely important part of the equation, no matter how you go. My kids, as you said, are all in public school. I believe in public schools, but I also believe in competition. And I believe that we can do better as a state. We have low rankings in a lot of areas, and that's not acceptable in my opinion.
Yeah. No, so some of the reforms that passed last year, maybe if you can give us a little bit of a summary of what that looked like, and then we can go into maybe what kind of things that we can do this year.
Yeah, Robert. So thank you for that question. Thank you for your involvement and everyone who's on here, this involvement in making us move forward. We've made incremental change. A few years back, even before I got here, they passed the Lindsay Nicole Henry Scholarship, which was a painful process to get through. People were talking about we were destroying public education as we knew it when trying to give kids with disabilities an opportunity to be educated in the scenario that best fit their needs. And so, believe it or not, we passed it, we've expanded it, and public education still survives and has more money than it ever has had. So the Lindsay Nicole Henry, I've been a part and early on working with Jason Nelson, who was a state house member who was really on the forefront of this, pushing Lindsay Nicole Henry. We pushed it to allow homeless children to get involved, to allow foster kids to get involved. Last year, we did open transfer, which just became effective in January. And open transfer is a very simple concept that I think many parents probably thought they already had, but until they tried to move their kids' schools. Previously, you had to have the sending school, so the school you were leaving, and the receiving school, the school you were going to, their superintendent sign off on your transfers. An arduous process that oftentimes there was no explanation why one kid was allowed to transfer and another kid was not. And so there's some inherent problems in there that one can imagine real easily if you're not having to give a description why you're denying someone's access to public education. We changed that last year, and it went into effect this month to allow people to transfer between public schools. But we gave school districts the opportunity to set the threshold of how many kids could transfer into those schools, what their capacity was. And I've seen some sheets from around the state that just almost want to make you sick to your stomach, and people gaming this system where the superintendents and school boards are sitting there saying we only have room for 4 fourth graders, and they have 20,000 students in their population. There's example after example of that where there's gamesmanship. We should not be afraid of giving parents full ability and flexibility to put their kids where they need to go. So open transfer was a good step in the process, but it did not allow them to go to private schools or use those monies for other purposes. We also passed last year the Opportunity Scholarship Fund, put some significant funds behind that, $50 million, and allowed money to go both to public and to private schools for people to get a tax write-off to be able to invest in their local schools, whether they be private or public.
You know, you're exactly right about the challenges with open transfer. You know, we've helped many parents in the past, and sometimes we've been able to do some of the transfers, but usually only from one, what we would call a low quality school to another low quality school. Whenever we've tried to transfer from a low quality school to a higher quality school, we've pretty much been denied 100% of the time. And you're right. I mean, we've seen some of these numbers coming out. We know that many of these districts have had higher enrollment because they've lost enrollment over the past couple of years. And to say that they have, very little capacity or no capacity when they had higher enrollment 2 years ago is really, it's kind of hard to believe in many cases. I will say that we've also worked with families that have been able to take advantage of the tax credit scholarship program. Some of our schools are only possible because of these programs, like Cristo Rey High School, Crossover Prep in Tulsa, many schools that serve underserved populations. Positive Tomorrows, I know that you have a very close heart with Positive Tomorrows. So, right now I'm thinking, I'm sure you've seen in the news the story of Joshua in Norman. Joshua is an autistic student who was being bullied, and this was captured on video. And many times we don't see these things on video, but they happen, unfortunately, a lot of the times. And there's this hole that exists for these students, because if the district can't do anything to ensure safety, there's very little that family can do, especially if the family doesn't have the resources to move them somewhere else. And so what kind of things are we looking at this year to empower parents in order to have more options especially when facing those kinds of circumstances?
Well, last year I told everyone that Open Transfer and Opportunity Scholarship Fund was a good start, and that we needed to have full choice for parents and for kids. Kids don't need to be trapped in the school district they're in. It may not even be that they're in danger, like that terrible story. I've watched the video. Actually saw Trey Young posted as how I came about it, seeing it and got some exposure to it. That's unacceptable, but it doesn't even have to be that bad. Sometimes your child needs a higher level math that school doesn't provide. Sometimes your kid is really interested in drama and wants to go to a school that best fits his or her needs. Sometimes it's a matter of they're just not fitting in that school, and they're not excelling to the pace that the parents think they need to. Every kid is unique. I have 3 kids, 14, 11, and 10. And if I tried to treat the 11 and 10-year-old exactly the same way I treat the 14-year-old with rigidity that the public school system currently has in the state law, my younger kids would not thrive. And vice versa. If we treated the older kid like the middle kid, he would not thrive. Each individual deserves the best educational needs for them, whatever meets their needs. And so this year, I've got a bill called the Oklahoma Empowerment Act, or OEA, that will empower parents to do just that, to allow their kids to go wherever they want to go. And that state aid formula follows that kid wherever they go, be it public or private, or even for some homeschool uses. And one of the big complaints that people have had, a red herring against school choice a lot of times, is, well, these people won't be able to afford transportation. So we baked in there that you can use that money for transportation. This is not just for, as you hear some people say, rich kids. In fact, it's designed for just the opposite. Yep. That kids who are trapped in poor, underperforming school districts can go wherever they want to. We also have a few other reforms. I have a bill that got stuck in the House. Hopefully it will come out this year, that allowed for November elections of school boards to get more participation in public school boards. I filed a bill also to allow for a recall on school boards if they're not being responsive.
Yeah.
and there's a number of reforms, and I want to be as aggressive as I possibly can be. These kids that are in the classroom today cannot afford for 3 or 4 years for something to improve. They need improvement now. I also refiled a bill that Representative Eccles and I had last year, that if a student's in an F school, they can transfer anywhere they want. But hopefully I don't need that, because hopefully I get full-blown school choice, so where any kid, no matter where they're at, is able to go to any school of their choice.
Absolutely. We've seen the frustration with parents over the past couple of years. I mean, and some parents, admittedly, have confronted some of these issues for the first time, but there's a growing awareness of how little of a say in their own child's education parents really have. So we really applaud your efforts to grow that empowerment for parents. I know that especially with the school board reform, because a lot of our parents want to stay in the traditional school environment, but however, it's not responsive to parents. So that's where these choice issues become very, very important. And then also adding in these reforms to the current traditional system become very important, because it can be better. And creating this environment that you're creating, this vision that you have, is just amazing, because it can change the dynamics. It can change the conversation in education to say, what can we do to improve our education system in order to make students and parents want to be in our school? What can we do better? How can we serve students in a way that makes this the best place for them and that fits their needs? And then at the same time, understanding that if they can't provide it, then it benefits us all for that student to be in another environment where it does fit their needs. So I really just want to applaud you on these efforts. Can you help us understand a little bit more on how the Oklahoma Empowerment Accounts will work?
Yeah, Senate Bill 1647 filed last week. It truly allows parents to just apply for the money that would have otherwise been going to their traditional public school, to follow that student to a private environment, to be able to buy equipment for homeschool needs, to be able to use that in whatever way. Now, it has to fit strictly toward that kid's education. It can't be used for anything else. But it's the average of the per pupil expenditure across the state, which is a significant amount of money, that will be able to go wherever that kid wants to go. But I need your help. This is not going to be a easy road to hoe. The status quo is the most powerful force, probably in everything, but especially in politics. And to disrupt that status quo is going to be a very difficult process. I am the Senate leader. I have a lot of ability to get things done, but this is not going to be an easy path for me, not even similar to that. I need everyone engaged. I need people calling their legislators. I need them sharing their personal stories. I need people to be engaged to get this across the finish line. This is not just, I'm not just filing on this to get a conversation started. I'm filing this to try to get it to the finish line, but I can't do it without your help.
Yeah, so let's delve a little bit deeper into that. What can parents do to help? Because obviously this would be a game changer for many of these families' lives. I mean, in these students' lives. We have parents that come to us all the time that say, look, I would really love to have my child in my parish's school, but I just can't afford it right now. And unfortunately, there are no programs available for me. Or other parents that say, I really need to put them in this other environment. We have this wonderful school in Northeast Oklahoma City called Infinity Generation Generals. And they're doing amazing things with improving reading scores, with really creating an environment where many African-American students can thrive. However, even the low tuition of $3,500 a year is out of reach for a lot of families. A lot of families who are already paying their taxes in order to fund their child's education, but feel like this might be in a better environment. So what can these parents do in order to help make sure that this tool is available to them?
Reach out to your legislator, both your House member and your Senate member, and ask them to co-author this bill and get behind it. We need as many co-authors as we can to get on it. I'm not one who typically seeks co-authors for my legislation. I typically just go out and try to convince people, but we need people to not be afraid to be for reform. The status quo, like I said, is very powerful. And some people will try to pass the narrative on that this destroys public education. Couldn't be further from the truth. Competition always drives excellence. Iron sharpens iron. We need to be competing for these dollars. And when you do, you'll see your own public school in your neighborhood improve as well, because all of a sudden they're not just guaranteed this pot of money. They have to compete for that pot of money. They have to be innovative. They have to be responsive to the parents' needs, or they lose some revenue. And right now, that's not really the case for most schools. Many public schools fit the needs of Oklahoma kids exceedingly well. There's a lot of dedicated public school teachers, even public school administrators, school board members that serve Oklahomans well. But just because some are doing it exceedingly well doesn't mean we need to ignore the rest of the state. These kids that are trapped in a zip code or into a neighborhood that they don't have the same opportunities that my kids have deserve the same opportunities that the Treat family has. We have to get this opportunity out to them, but how they can help is reaching out to their legislator. Almost every legislator that I know, myself included, when I get a constituent reach out to me and want to have coffee, I meet for coffee. When people want to reach out and come to the Capitol and set a meeting, I do it. Here's what I'll warn you against. Don't just show up to the Capitol and demand a meeting with the legislator. Actually set up an appointment. Sit down and share your story, why you are not able to get the best education for your kid or someone you know, or some ministry you're involved in. One of the biggest knocks I've heard thus far since I filed it, and I just filed it Thursday, so it hasn't been that far, but I've already heard people freaking out that I filed it, that I would have the nerve to file something like this. One of the things I hear over and over is this isn't going to help rural Oklahoma at all. Well, first off, that completely ignores the fact that many options do exist in rural Oklahoma. They may be small, they may be related to a church, but this all of a sudden creates a marketplace. This creates, if there's a church in your community that's been thinking about expanding beyond just a Mother's Day out into actually elementary education, they can do it. And there's a marketplace for this, for your kids to be in an environment that you choose. The other, there's going to be plenty of criticisms you hear. So just put on the armor, get ready for the fight. It's going to be a fight, but our kids are worth it.
No, you're exactly right. We just spoke to a church leader in Woodward a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about some of these ideas, and previously, before hearing about some of these innovative ideas, they would never even have thought about trying to start a new school. But this could all of a sudden open a lot of doors. And not to mention, we have so many great educators around the state, especially in rural Oklahoma, that might think about creating a micro school or becoming an edupreneur. But you're exactly right. This could really open up a marketplace of ideas. So, Senator Treat, I really want to thank you for your time here with us today and everything that you're doing. I know that the parents that you have talked with and in your district, really love you and appreciate you. So I just want to make sure to pass that along as well.
Well, thank you. I know not all of them love me because I've heard from a few of them this weekend, but I do appreciate those that love me. We're all aimed for the same thing. We want a better Oklahoma. And let's not be stuck in what we've always done it. We've always done it this way is not a reason to do something. We must have evidence that this is best for our kids, and innovation and competition will drive excellence. Our kids deserve it.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.